If you look at any brand, every day they have to make so many business decisions. For example, which campaign to go live with, what packaging to go live with, right? What price point we should launch this particular, product. Or for example, let's say, should we go with buy one get one, or 10% discount? But in terms of making sure that these decisions are right, they have a couple of ways available with them, which are outdated.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Founder Spotlight series on behalf of Tracxn, where we invite various startup co-founders to share their journey, some sort of insights and advice to the youngsters who have startup dreams. Well, today with me is Mr. Mohd Azam, who is the founder of DoppelIQ. Hi Azam, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Supan. How about you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today. And first of all, let me welcome you on behalf of the Tracxn family, and thanks a lot for making some time out of your busy schedule.
Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. My name is Supan Dasgupta, and I'm heading the startup vertical over here. Now, let's get started with this podcast.
Sure.
To start with, we would love to understand the backstory behind finding DoppelIQ. What was the idea behind it? You can share your background as well, so that our audience are aware about this concept.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, like a lot of us, right? I didn't start as a founder. I started as a GTM leader. I spent over a decade helping companies grow, leading marketing and go-to functions for them. And during that time, one thing became very obvious to me, which was like companies are spending millions making decisions with very little certainty, right? Now, whether it's launching a new campaign, changing prices, or introducing a new product, the common answer was, let's run a survey, right? And the harsh reality is that when you run a survey on top of your consumers, generally, consumers don't always know why they buy, right? And that's the harsh reality. And by the time research comes back, right, the market has already moved. So that's what led us to, building DoppelIQ. We create AI-powered consumer digital twins that simulate what customers are likely to do before any company spends money in the real world, primarily.
Understood. So you're trying to bridge that gap, right?
Exactly.
Got it. Interesting. Anything specific that you would love to highlight for the next 12 months or so down the line, which is going to be very much exciting about DoppelIQ?
So not only about DoppelIQ, I would say, I think it's a shift, right? I think the biggest shift we will see is that AI moves from creating content to making decisions, right? The last 2 years, if you look at it, were about AI helping people write emails, generate, let's say, images or code faster, right? The next phase is much, much bigger, right? AI will increasingly answer questions like, should we launch this particular campaign? Should we increase, the prices, right? Which customer segment should we target and stuff like that, right? Because if you look at it, every major business decisions today still involves uncertainty, right? Over the next decade, I believe companies will routinely simulate decisions, before executing them in the real world. That's the future we are building towards as well.
Got it. So since it's a very young startup, I would say, I think you started just 1.5 years back, if I'm not wrong. Would you like to share some of your initial challenges which hit you very hard exactly 1 year back, and you actually probably found those challenges very hard hitting for yourself, or probably some of the challenges which your industry faces the most? We would love to hear that.
Right. I think one challenge that this industry is facing is that if you look at how marketeers or businesses are making these decisions today, right? So if you look at any brand, every day they have to make so many business decisions. For example, which campaign to go live with, what packaging to go live with, right? What price point we should launch this particular, product. Or for example, let's say, should we go with buy one get one, or 10% discount, right? That kind of offer, right? So all of these decisions companies have to take every single day. But in terms of making sure that these decisions are right, they have a couple of ways available with them, which are outdated, right? So for example, if you look at the current ways, one is you would either rely on surveys. You will ask people what they suggest, and the moment you go to surveys, again, it takes a lot of time. It takes weeks to get you the insights. It takes a lot of biasness from people while answering those surveys, right? The survey response rate is very low, right? So these kind of challenges people already face. What are other available ways? I think another available way is primarily looking at the dashboard, right? You go back and check your dashboard. You see like what has happened in the past and what is probably going to happen if we do or go ahead with this particular decision, right? Now, end of the day, if you take a step back and look at it, what is happening is, whether you have backward looking data available with you or you are running a survey, end of the day you are making a gut based decision, right? And that is exactly where the problem lies, right? For example, Jaguar came up with a new logo. It failed. The campaign failed, right? Nike came up with a new tagline. That campaign failed. Think about it. I mean, with so much of resources, money, everything available with them, they're still not able to see the future, right? They're guessing, right? This will work. This can work, right? And this is exactly the gap we are trying to bridge with DoppelIQ.
Got it. Got it. Quite interesting to know those examples which you quoted, both Jaguar and Nike, right? Uh, as we know that in the last 3-4 years, there has been a very huge impact of AI
Yeah,
and almost
everything.
every kind of ecosystem, I would say, right? Talking about your own ecosystem, we would love to understand how you are leveraging this impact to your benefit, I would say, if you can just throw some light on this.
So I think AI has changed both how we build and what we build as well, right? Earlier, softwares, kind of help people analyze historical data. Today, AI lets you simulate the future, right? That's a fundamental shift in itself, right? Internally, AI has also drastically reduced the time it takes to prototype ideas, right? Experiment with new features and build products, right? So what it has enabled is that it has enabled smaller teams today to achieve something that were only possible, by a larger team 3 years back or so, right? So I would say the biggest advantage of AI today isn't automation itself, right? It's reducing the cost of experimentation, right? So us being a very small team, we got the power to experiment fast, and the cost of these experiments are pretty low, right? So in a way, that kind of bridges the gap between a smaller company and a bigger company.
Understood. Understood. What could be your next immediate goal? I would say maybe I'll just give you some of the example, some of the options to you. Maybe it is product, or it's fundraising, or let's say market research around your product, or maybe competitor analysis. Right? What are you going to pick? Maybe in the next 6 months.
See, I think all four are important, but in terms of prioritization, it completely depends on at what stage a company is, right? We are sitting at a position where we are dealing with enterprises, have a healthy pipeline, right? Have closed a couple of early customers as well, right? So we are seeing the traction. At this moment, I think we are in a good shape to go for our fundraise. And the moment that part is done, we would be able to kind of scale things up pretty fast. So I would pick fundraise from the given options because of the stage that we are at.
Understood. And before even you jump into the fundraising part, the mandate part, I'm sure there is something called competitor analysis, which is part and parcel of the journey of any startup, right? To do that analysis, right? In your industry, in your sector, I'm sure in the last 1 or 2 years, you would have seen, or maybe in the last so many years, you have seen similar kind of companies who have some sort of similar kind of business model, right?
Yeah.
How did you go about analyzing competitors in your own segment? Let's start with that.
Right. So there are two parts of analysis, right? One is the business side, wherein you would see like how they are planning their growth, right? In terms of how they are raising, at what valuation they are raising, right? Who they are raising for, from, right? And stuff like that. Another part is wherein you try to understand your competitors, like what are their strengths and weaknesses in terms of the product and capabilities, right? So I think both these pieces have their own, play. I think for the later part, for the first part, wherein understanding the business model and stuff like that, I think Tracxn is a pretty good platform to be able to do so, and that is why we are leveraging Tracxn. But on the first part, I think this is something that you should start at least 6 months, before you hit the build button into your system. This is something that should have been on your cards 6 months before that, right? So, and it is a never ending process, right? Every day, every brand, every company that you are kind of competing with, they are changing their strategy, they are coming up with new features, so you have to keep up with that. So I think, yeah, I mean, broadly speaking, these are the two pieces to it.
Understood. Taking the same context forward in terms of fundraising journey, what do you feel as a founder yourself? What are the whys, when, and where to start this fundraise journey? Why should a founder should go for fundraising at the first place?
So yeah, I mean, it again depends on what kind of company you want to build, right? So for example, for a company like us, we are a AI native company, right? The cost of building the product is far lesser than cost of making it, valuable for a customer, right? So when the customer starts using, there's a lot of money that goes into, tokens and a lot of other stuff, right? And for that, if you really want to go fast, if you really want to grow fast, then you'll have to, have good amount of money in order to support that cause, right? Another part is like there are people who have built, bootstrap businesses as well, right? That path is completely different, right? If you are going into that particular path, then obviously fundraising is a plus thing for you, not a must have thing for you, right? And I think we are in a space wherein we definitely need to raise fund, and we would be going after that in the near future.
Understood. Understood. So this question keeps popping up every time we interact with any founder of different startups, right? The when when to start this? What is the right time to go about investor search, right? How do we understand that? What is the right time? How do we define that as per you?
So I think again, I mean, it's very contextual, right? And it's very debatable, right? There are companies who have kind of raised money at an idea stage itself. There are companies, or for example, if there's a new category that you're creating, right, then the validation from customer becomes very important, right? So until unless you have a couple of customers or their testimonials in written, right, that this is the pain point that you have solved for them, and this is of X value to these particular companies, right? It would be hard for any investor to also put in money, right? See it from their perspective. They are betting on something that may or may not happen, right? So they also want to make sure that when they're putting in money, they're putting on the right horses, right? How do they ensure that they're putting it on the right horses? By having some checks in place, right? For example, if there's a new category, right, that is getting created. For a new category, obviously it is going to take a lot of money to educate the market and stuff like that, right? For that, do you have good enough validation from the market? If you have good enough validation from the market, then obviously investor would have much more confidence in putting in you, right? Another piece, like the investors, I believe that becomes very important for them also, is the founding team, right? Have you faced that problem yourself or not, right? Have you lived that problem or not, right? How close are you to that particular problem, and how big is the problem? Is this problem good enough to for people to get solved, and they will pay you in return, right? Because not always all the problems are paying enough, I would say.
Got it. Got it. Well said. Now, tell me this: any specific advice you would love to give to uh, a young startup co-founder who is in his late 20s? what are the do's and don'ts when he starts something on his own?
I think first thing is like, don't start with an idea, right? And this is where we fail generally, right? Start with a problem that keeps showing up, right? Every successful startup, you know, looks very obvious in hindsight, right? But in the beginning, it usually, looks like a very niche problem that only a few people care deeply about, right? But that is what becomes big, right? If you are able to hop onto that particular problem and provide a valuable solution to it, right? Also, it's very important to talking to your customers much earlier than you think, right? Most founders spend months building, but you would see that the best founders spend months learning, right? Customers generally, I mean, see it from this particular lens, right? If I have to sum it up, I'll sum it up like this: like, customers don't pay for the innovation, right? They pay for certainty that you will solve a painful problem for them. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a very interesting piece of advice, and I'm sure people who will be watching this interview later, they will take a note of it, right? Of what we have spoken just now, right? Since this interview will go live in front of the investors as well, any sort of input that you would love to throw via this podcast to any investor who will be watching and understanding your business model, you can just let us know that as well.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we are in the market now, have good validation. For investors, I'm not in a position to give them advice, but I think we need to be a little bit more flexible and open to accepting, breakthrough ideas as well in the market. What we are building is something very innovative, very foundational, and obviously it takes a lot of guts for investors also to kind of back these kind of ideas. But yeah, it is a very interesting space that we are in.
Got it. Great. Um, my final question for today will be, since we have been part of Tracxn for last few weeks or few months, I would say, right? What role did Tracxn play in your market research journey? If you can just throw some light on that.
So honestly speaking, we are just getting started with Tracxn, so not in the right position to talk about the benefit. But so far, the capabilities that we have seen by evaluating the platform during the evaluation, and with the little knowledge that we gained, by using the platform, I think there's enough flesh for somebody like us as an early stage startup to kind of start their research and build a strategy for their fundraise. I think there's nothing that I would say is missing at this moment that might be required to raise the funds. And that is why we think we are going in the right direction towards the fundraise as well.
Fantastic. Great, Azam. That's all from my side for today, right? We would love to revisit you in 2027 to cover up some more success stories around DoppelIQ. Great talking to you. It was a fantastic conversation. I wish I could have taken this further, but maybe because of your time limit, we will have to stop at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, and we'll look forward in 2027 to talk to you again.
Thanks, Supan. Pleasure is all mine. Have a great day.